Hi, everyone. Dr. Tim here for another Dr. Tim's Aquatics podcast. And joining me is Thomas Berchery from ASF, Aquarium Systems France, and Dale Lewis from Reptile Systems located in the UK. And we're going to talk about a major product for each brand. Thomas is going to talk about Reef Shots. Dale is going to talk about the Ferguson Zone. And I will talk about the waste away gels. First up is Thomas. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us this morning.
Hi,
I know
Tim.
you have a presentation, so let me get that up on the screen. Okay, I hope I've got this in the right order.
Oh, whatever.
Okay, all yours.
Wow, all means. So, speaking about reef shots, I think we need to understand the genesis of the reef shots, how we came out with the idea of making reef shots. I would say since 40 years or 40 plus years, it has been in the reef industry how can I explain this? We were using bottles, to make supplements. When you needed supplements, you had a bottle of calcium or magnesium, which you were opening when you needed to add once the corals have depleted this specific element. Problem with bottles, whether they are 8 ounces, 16 ounces, is that every time you open the bottle, some air get in. And of course, you can have oxidation of the products. Also, you could have pollution of the products. Let's say someone polluted with any kind of materials in the air, then you get trouble. The advantages of the reef shots is we took a different road. And instead of having a bottle where you take part of the bottle, maybe 20 milliliters, we decided to create what we call unidoses. So that means you have one dose, one shot of products that you can use and put in your tank. So the idea was, okay, you have a product freshness. So that every time you open a new vial, you are going to have a product that have never seen the air. Because when we manufacture and make the reef shots, inside we put some nitrogen, which means you are going to have a very long shelf life for all the products, and you're not going to have oxidation. And it's especially important when you have products like iodide or products like vitamins, for instance. So that's the product freshness, and the no pollution is a very big step forward, I think, for the industry. Another one, which is very important for me, and I would say for European, is not yet the case in the US, but I think it's coming, is the usage of plastic. So all the reef shots, of course, are still made of plastic, but the plastic we have chosen to use is only recycled plastic, and it's completely recyclable. Also, if you consider, for instance, 24 shots like we have right now is about 16 ounces. Well, is 16 ounces the equivalent of 16 ounces bottles? And if you weight a plastic bottle of 16 ounces with the lid, with everything, and if you weight the 24 vials, the empty vials, in that case, you have 30 to 35% less plastic in use. It's what you have on the screen right now. So that means even when you use it, you could believe at the first thought, and I think, Tim, you mentioned this to me, but you're using lots of plastic. In fact, we're not. We are using less plastic compared to what we were doing before. So once we started with this very innovative packaging, then we decided which products were supposed to be used. And we divide the reef shots into 3 main categories. So there are 9 shots right now in the range. And the 3 main categories is one, which is very targeted for what I call major elements. So is calcium, magnesium, strontium, iodide. So that's product that you use when you make a test kit. You make a test of your water, and your calcium level, for example, has dropped. You want to increase the calcium level. You just use a shot of calcium. So of course, on the boxes, you know, 1 shot of calcium is going to bring about 5 milligrams of calcium in your tank. So you can easily do a calculation of how much 1 shot is going to bring in a tank. The second part of the Reef Shot range is more focused on trace elements. So here, in that case, we have 2 products. One is Coralline Booster, which, as its name stands for, it will boost the color of your coralline algae. So it will help the algae to synthesize the calcium, and also it will increase the color of the coralline. So the coralline is going to be much brighter and will be more reddish, purplish, which is a very nice color in the tank. Reef Element is a product very specifically dedicated with many trace elements in it. I think there is about 20 or 25 elements. So you have manganese, boron. So all of the trace elements your corals are going to need to grow and also to have very nice color. The last segment of the Reef Shot range is more about what we call health booster. So it's going to be probiotic bacteria. So this one has been developed with the help of the world's most renowned specialist on bacteria for aquariums, named Dr. Tim Zavanek. Thank you, Tim.
Who?
Well, someone famous. He made a PhD about bacteria. Very famous guy. You should look his presentation. It's quite interesting. For any aquarium lover, very interesting. Then we have a shot based on vitamins, and this is going to help also to boost the immune system of the fish, of the corals. And the interesting point of the vitamin shot is, as I said, you don't have shelf life, you don't have problems when you open it. And it's also quite interesting when you want to make a dip. So before you want to transport a fish, if you want to reduce the stress, you can add a shot of vitamins inside the fish bag or the corals, or before putting your corals inside your tank, you can also use the vitamin shot to dip the corals. And the last one in the range is the reef bacteria food. So reef bacteria food is not a food for bacteria. No, it's a food for corals based on bacteria. Once again, developed by a very world-renowned specialist, which is you, Tim. So the food is made, so it's bacteria that have been gut-loaded with vitamins and which will help the corals that are filter feeders. Up to 50% of the food intake of corals is made of bacteria. And thanks to these bacteria, you will help to have a better coral growth and a much more colorful tank, because your corals are going to have much more colors. So you're going to tell me.
Sorry. Because you mentioned contamination, especially like with people dose vitamins or small amounts and they have a dropper.
Yeah.
They take the dropper and they put it in the solution, but then they accidentally touch the tip of the dropper to their seawater.
Yeah, or when you
contaminated.
Or when you dose Lugol, you can have trouble, for iodide, and that can be a problem. It's also a very funny way to add products in your tank. I don't know if it's a good example, but sometimes with my son, we do the maintenance together, and he always wants to help. So what do kids want to do? They want to add things in the tank. And frankly speaking, with a bottle, if you give them a bottle, they might empty the bottle in the tank, which might not be the best things to do for calcium or magnesium.
That's adults also.
But when you give him a shot, exactly, you can open the shot and put this directly in the tank, and no harm is going to be made because you know exactly what is going to be put inside. All the reef shots are also being delivered with what we call a dropper stopper. So that means if you open a dose and you don't need to use it all, you can add this little dropper on the top, and you can put only half a dose, and then you can put this on top, and you can keep this up to your next use. Of course, it's not sealed anymore. You don't have nitrogen anymore, so better to use it quick. But it's still a way to use partially a shot before throwing away the empty shots.
So this next graphic here kind of shows what you were.
Yeah, it's the 5B sequences. So you can use it with the dropper that you put on top. Of course, it's an easy way. So you take the vial from the pack. Always shake well. And the reason is you might have some precipitation, so shake well again, like you do for a bottle. Basically, it's a miniature bottle that we are using with the shots. So,
right.
But with the added value of, for me, it's a fun way to dose products, and also from the most important part is the product cleanliness, which we show there.
Yeah, and there's 24 vials per box, and each box equals 16 ounces. So you're getting the same amount of solution. It's just each vial tells you what's in it. I can't remember what the calcium is, but you can it's much easier to do the math. You know what your volume of your aquarium is.
It's written on the box. It's written on the box saying if you put 1 vial into 100-liter tanks, it will raise the calcium level by 2 milligrams per liter, for instance. So everything is written on the document. We have also created a dosage charts because, of course, you have 9 products. So you're going to tell me, oh, that's a lot. I don't want to use that many products. And depending on what you want to do with your tank, better to use it or not. Of course, you could have a fish-only tank, and in that case, okay, you are going to use more the health booster system, so like the probiotics or the vitamins. And also, if you have your reef tank, and if you use, I don't know, supplement with a dosing pump, which you can do with the reef powder, but I think that would be for the next podcast. But you can still have elements that you want to add even more after a water test. So that's why we have, depending on your usage, we can say it's a vials a week or 2 vials a week, and we have a dosage chart. So I don't know if you can put it, Tim, on.
Yep.
Yes, correct. So,
right.
and we said it's 2 shots per week, or it's going to be a shot a week. That's general guidance. But to have good results, especially on the reef bacteria food, once you start using it, you really have to continue to use it. Because if you are feeding your corals and at one point you stop feeding them, of course, they are not going to be happy. So once you start, you have to continue to use it to have better results.
Right, and some of these things take time. I mean, like the reef food, the vitamins, probiotics, it's not some instantaneous thing where calcium, you add the calcium and you could the next morning or 6 hours measure the increase. Some of these others, it takes time to see the color change. A good thing is to take a picture of your corals and then measure the progress after a week or 2. But don't expect results on some of these.
And some of the products are not made to have visible results in a way. For example, probiotics, you do this so that your tank's not getting bad.
Right.
And yeah. I know you had already the experience that some people say, oh, I was using this, I stopped, and then my tanks turned bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have continued using it.
Yeah.
So, but of course, when everything works great, sometimes you want to stop using products, but it's true that in the bacteria, as you said, Tim, very often when you have protein skimmers, UV sterilizer, they take away the bacteria from the water. So you need to add constantly these products.
Right. Very popular in the US now are the roller mat filters. How is
Yeah,
that popular in Europe too?
Yeah, it's
it's
getting
quite
more and more.
expensive. So it's the high-end people that are using this. Yeah.
I mean, it's all ways of removing organics or detritus, but you're also removing bacteria. And as I've talked about over and over and over again, that's kind of the root of everyone's problem is making the water too pure from a bacterial standpoint, and it just opens the tank up to having dinos and cynos and hair algae. So this is great. The reef shots
The
are
reef shots. Yeah.
reef shots are available through Dr. Tim's, and thank you very much for.
Yeah, and I know that especially for the coral lover, the vitamins one is very interesting because first you don't need to put it in the fridge. We know we have some colleagues that have products that once you open you have to put in the fridge. In that case, you don't. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you have received some shots. So if you are at a coral exhibition, you might have some free shots to give away.
Yeah,
If they
we're
buy a
working
shot,
on
they can have some. Yeah.
yeah, working
So
on samples. Yep.
so that's nice, and it's always nice to see the effect on your blue with the blue light when you put the vitamin shots, for example, in your tank. You can really see the effect on how it gets in the tank.
Right. So those gorgeous coral tanks where the corals are just radiating colors, that doesn't happen by chance, folks. That happens through good husbandry and feeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes time and effort. So thank you very much, Thomas, on that
You're welcome.
introduction to Reef Shots from ASF. Now we're going to talk to Dale, and Dale is going to discuss.
The Ferguson zones and how we use them, I think, is probably the best way to say that.
Okay.
If you've got my little thing on there, Tim.
So I've got to share the right.
I'll talk while you kind of find. So the Ferguson zones are basically a classification on the amount of UVI for animals. Dr. Gary Ferguson many years ago and several other scientists sort of since have expanded this classification to pretty much involve all animals and put them into 4 zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, and Zone 4. And they all depend on the levels of UVI that the animal needs in the wild. So why are they important? They're important because we need to kind of recreate their natural behaviors, their natural habitats. And it's a way of categorizing how much UV to give the animal compared to their microhabitat or their habitats in the wild. So the more we can replicate, their wild environment, the better they are in our enclosed environment, in our homes or in our stores or wherever they may be. So by applying the Ferguson zones, reptile keepers and breeders can keep appropriate UV lighting for their animals and for the specific needs of them. We don't use the percentage scale. The percentage scale measures the amount of UVB in the lamp or the lamp emits. So that would be along the lines of 2%, 5%, 6%, 10%, 12%, 14%. And the problem is that a 10% compact, a 10% spiral, a 10% T8, and a 10% T5 will all give you 4 different amounts of UVI, but they're all classified as 10%. So the packaging on other people's UV products will all say 10%, but the light output will differ completely. And it will be the difference of, in our opinion, when we look at the UVI, all those 10% products can be zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So if you've got a bearded dragon, which is in zone 3, and you buy a 10% compact, the amount of UV that comes out of that 10% compact isn't enough for your animal. So we've got animal welfare issues that are at heart here, and we wanted to make it very, very clear. that if whatever animal you've got in whatever zone, you simply buy the zone product for that animal. And if you flick to the next slide, we categorized it very, very simply. And there we go. So we color coded them all. Zone 1, blue, zone 2, green, zone 3, orange, and zone 4, purple. Now in old money, to give you some ideas, zone 1 would be about 2%. Zone 2 is 6%, zone 3 is 12%, and zone 4 is about 15%. So there is it's not quite as clear as that, but people that know the percentage or are used to kind of buying a percentage lamp, there is a correlation. But if you have a zone 3 animal, you buy a zone 3 product, and you now know by looking at the guide on the back of the box what distance to keep your animal or what distance to have the lamp to your animal to be able to achieve that zone 3. So once we've used this classification of animals and we sort of adopted this poster is available. So yeah, Thomas just mentioned about several shows. We've got loads of consumer shows coming up, and we've all got these posters to kind of give away. So if you find yourself near a Reptile Systems booth, come and have a chat with us and you can pick one of these posters up. They're great to have in the store if you're a store listening. They're great to have at home, really informational in terms of, you know, what animals are in what zones. So the idea being for the keeper or the hobbyist is that they choose their animal, they find out what zone, and then they buy a UV product based on that zone. So we have 4 T5 lamps at 4 different powers to go in each of these zones. All our T5 lamps are designed in Germany. And built and sort of finished in Germany. We've spent many, many years making sure that the UVI output of our lamps match the UVI requirements of the animals in those 4 zones. All our lamps will last 1 year of UVI output before they replace or need replacing. So you've got a 1 year, 1 lamp. There we are, made in Germany. Zone 1 is equivalent to 2.4 if you're looking at sort of old money. Zone 1 comes in, you've basically got 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and 4 foot sizes in terms of the lamp. And we call that a zone 1. Zone 1 is things like leopard gecko. So this is nocturnal species that like really, really low levels of UV or UVI. And you can see that chart there on the bottom right of your screen. And what that is, that's a measurement. I understand, I've just realized that's in centimeters and not inches. 4 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches, 16 and 18. That's the UVI requirement that you're going to get out of that lamp with a reflector, without a reflector. The clip-on reflector is the kind of aftermarket aluminum reflector that can go on the lamp. And then the Eco T5 unit, I'll come on to in a second. If you go to the next one, Tim. So in zone 2, 6% in old money, and you can see there, same chart. Zone 2 is more kind of forest sort of type animals. So the UVI requirement a little bit higher, chameleons and frogs. So these live under the kind of speckled effect where the sunlight is coming through the trees, through the canopies. So they're not out in the desert. These are in the forest at that kind of medium level of UVI output. Again, this is available. All the wattages are the industry standard 24, 39, and 54, roughly equating to 2 foot, 3 foot, and 4 foot lamps. And then zone 3. Again, made in Germany, equivalent to 12%. And you've got the chart. That chart is on every single package of T5 lamps. So you'll find that chart on the back of all the lamps, whether it's zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, or zone 4 on the next one. So this is the 15%. This is really for your crazies. There's not many animals in zone 4. To give you an idea, there's about, I think there's 100, 120 that are classified as zone 1. There is over 200 and 300 in zone 2 and zone 3. And I think there's about 20, maybe 25 animals in zone 4. These are sort of things that are living out in the desert. Species like chuckwallers, some uromastics that really like the temperature well over 100, 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
There you can use the zone 4 and the zone 2 animals if you're far away, depending on the size of your enclosure.
Yes.
Yep,
yes, that's correct. Yes. It's all to do with distance from lamp to animal. But if we go to the next one, this is where we kind of put the T5 into use. So the Eco T5 unit is a T5 fixture that comes complete with the lamp, with the unit, with the connections. We make this unit as safe as possible. So what that means is we put an earth cable in there. So it's a 3-core cable going in, so there's no risk of electric shocks.
For you in the US, that means it's three-prong grounded, not earth. We call it grounded.
Grounded, of course. Oh, grounded. Yes. Yes. Yeah, we ground ours into the earth. So this is available in 4 different sizes to meet the 4 different sizes of lamps we just spoke about, which is basically 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and 4 foot. The unit comes complete. So you get the unit, the cables, the fixings, and the lamp inside the box. But what's really special about this unit, there's 2 key features. One is it's the only product on the market to come with a dual output reflector. So just behind the lamp there on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that the reflector comes away. So the reflector's got 2 sides to it. One will triple the output of your of the UVI. So if you was to put a UVI lamp in there at 12 inches that produced a 2 UVI, by using that lamp, you will get 6. If you was to take that reflector out and turn it over to the low output side, you will then halve that, so it drops it down to 3. So it really gives you ultimate flexibility in whether what the height is of your enclosure or what the UVI you need for your animal, based on whether you've kind of got decor in there with hides and ramps and logs and that kind of thing that it can really kind of go to. So if you just
go, this chart is, Dale, right here.
Yeah. So basically, what we say there is, I mean, you've got not safe, because when you put the triple or the high output side of the reflector, you've got a lamp that's producing sort of 7 UVI, and then you've got 21 UVI coming out. So at that distance, that lamp with that reflector is not safe for your animal. It's just too high. So if you just skip forward again for me, the second point about the Eco T5 unit, well, it's got 2-year warranty. That's the main thing. So it's ready to go out of the box. But the other thing is that it can be daisy chained. So if you've got 2 or 3 enclosures that are next to each other, you can use the daisy chain cable, which is about 3.5 feet long, and you can plug that in, so you can have a mains going into one end, then you can have the daisy chain linking from one to the other. Or if you've got a really large enclosure, you can still only use one power supply, but you might want 2 or 3 4-foot lamps or units that kind of cover a large area, depending on what you're using, basically. You can fix this. You can put this directly over the top of the mesh on a mesh enclosure. You can fix this into a wooden or a plastic enclosure, but we also provide the clips, so you can fix this under the mesh. Now, what's important about that is that mesh will remove 30 to 40% of the UVI output of the lamp. Anything that gets in the way of the lamp to the animal is going to reduce the UV. So if you want to put it under the mesh, the fixing kit that's inside there will do that, and you will get increased light output and UVI power in for your animal as well, making it better. And the next couple of slides is the packaging and the charts that's on. So that's Eco Zone 1. And that chart on the left-hand side is exactly the same as the charts we showed earlier. But as Thomas mentioned, what we do on this one is we show you the different colors. So blue is Zone 1, but you've got the green there, that means it's kind of moved into Zone 2, or you've got the orange, which is Zone 3.
Which is all based on the distance from the lamp to the bottom?
The animal. No, to the animal.
But how would you use this in, say, vivarium's normally like 18 inches deep?
Yeah.
Or tall, right?
So it all depends where your decor is and where that animal would be based. So if going on that chart there, if your enclosure is 20 inches deep and your animal is always based at the bottom, then you're going to need the high output to get down 20 inches. But if you've got decor in there and your animal, like a chameleon, would never live at the 20 inches at the bottom, it would be across your branches or your decor, maybe around the kind of 12 to 16 inches away from the lamp. So in that respect, you would turn your high reflector to the low to achieve the kind of 1.2, 0.9 of this zone 1 on this example, because the high reflector is just a bit too powerful for your animal. And what it'll do, it'll come out and bask for a few hours of the day, but then the rest of it, it would be the UVI would be too much, and the animal would sort of move away to a hide or an enclosure, an area where it's getting less UV. So you're right that you need to look at the height of the enclosure, but the real measurement is the lamp to the animal
Yeah.
in
So
where it's going to be.
chameleons are up in the
Yeah, the top half
top,
normally.
where
The top
bearded
half, yeah.
dragons and others are slinks are down in the bottom.
Yes. So if you was to kind of go forward a couple of slides, so you got zone 2 coming up next. Sorry, other way. So you got zone 2 there, and you can see that zone 2 has got the orange in there as well for the zone 3, because it all depends on that height and that reflector position. So if your animal is and if you go to our website, if you have an even larger enclosure of 24 or 30 inches, if you go to reptilesystems.com, you'll be able to kind of see the full chart of the larger distances. So if you wanted 24 inches, 26 inches, you're going to need the high output reflector to push that UV down further and further and further. But again, as zone 2 is used for a lot of chameleons. And as Tim just said, if your chameleon is in the top half of your enclosure at 12 inches, then you're going to need to turn it to the low side of the reflector. The easiest way to do this is to kind of buy a solar meter, and then you can test the UVI at all these different levels and match the reflector to it. But they're expensive. For most people, they're $250 to $300. They're a very worthwhile bit of kit to have. Because it will quite clearly tell you when your lamp is exhausted, or whether you need to move your decor or move the lamp. But they're expensive. So the idea is we've put the charts on the side of the box to give you all the information you need. So if you haven't got a solar meter, you know whether you need low reflector or high reflector at this distance or this distance, depending on your enclosure. So in a nutshell, Ferguson Zone classifies the animals into 4 zones, and we make T5 lamps and units to cover all 4 zones to make things nice and easy.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Dale. And as
No problem.
we have a website that has a lot of information, and you can always contact us at info@reptilesystems.com with questions.
True. Yeah, it's all good.
And so now I'm going to talk about our Dr. Tim's Aquatics waste away gels. So what I want to talk about today is our waste away gels. This goes back a little bit to what Thomas was talking and what I've mentioned many times, is that the unintended consequence of the protein skimmer, the UV, ozonizer, and now roller filters is that you're constantly removing the beneficial bacteria. And I'm not talking about nitrifiers. I'm talking about the bacteria that are in the water column that consume nitrates and phosphates and degrade organics, because we want the aquarium to be perfectly clean, gin clear water. And that's visually appealing, but it creates all sorts of problems. So several years ago, maybe 4 now, I developed these waste away gels. And what this is, it's our waste away bacteria in a time release gel. And it comes in a variety of types. There's freshwater, marine, turtle amphibians, which are great for axolotls, bettas, plants. They're all reef safe, and they are encased in plastic that's made from recycled plastic, and they're recyclable. So they're very environmentally friendly. And what you can do is they come in 3 different sizes: small, which is up to 10 gallons, medium, which is up to 50 gallons, and large, which is 100 gallons. The biggest issue we have is if I scroll in here, you're going to see that there's a remove label on here. Each one of these gels is encased in shrink wrap. That's when we fill the gel, it's liquid and we don't want it to escape out of the holder, obviously. We have to wait till the gel polymerizes or basically solidifies. So you need to remove the shrink wrap that encases the gel, which might seem obvious, but you would be surprised about how many people contact us. I've had my gel in the tank for a month and nothing's happened. The color is exactly the same. Send us a picture and you close up on the picture and the shrink wrap that's around the gel has not been removed. So that's what we're talking about, is remove the shrink wrap. You can also see it comes with a suction cup. You take the suction cup and you can put the gel anywhere in the tank. Now, it does not need, in fact, we recommend you do not put it where you have water flow hitting it. The bacteria are going to come out of this. It'll work. It doesn't need a lot of water flow anywhere in the tank, in the sump, in the false wall, just anywhere in the system. It'll work. The other thing that will happen, especially if it's the first time you've used the gel, is you might start seeing this, for lack of a better word, snot growing all over the holder. That's bacterial film. And you have a couple of choices. You can carefully take the gel out and wipe that off with a Kleenex or something like that and throw it away. Or you can just wipe that into the tank, because that's bacteria and it's great food for corals. As Lamont mentioned, and as I've been preaching, corals filter feed. They consume bacteria 24/7 because the ocean is full of bacteria. The great study done years ago with a flow cytometer showed that once you turn that skimmer on, the bacteria levels in the water drop tremendously. And that's why your corals don't have much color. You're not feeding them right. And it isn't something passive. You just gonna set up the tank and put water in it and your corals are going to grow. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, if you want that great color and good growth, you've got to feed your tank, but you got to know how to do it. And one way is definitely the bacteria. And what the bacteria will do as they're being constantly leached out of the gel is that they're consuming nitrates and phosphates. They're degrading organic. So they're keeping the tank clean, and we're using those bacteria then as food. They last for 30 days, and they'll change color to a kind of a faded color, sometimes a gray color, and that means they're exhausted, and you can then throw them away and replace them. These are the different types that we have. You know, we say when it goes gray, throw it away. It may not be gray, but it'll definitely be faded, and it should be noticeable, especially if you're using have bettas or small tanks. The betta one is great because it's hard to do big water changes without having to change 100% of the water. Plant tanks, you've got it all nice and decorated. How are you going to do a water change without disturbing all that? The amphibian or turtle one is wonderful. It cuts down on that smell, clears the water. So there's a variety of uses for our waste away gels.
Tim, would these also, you said smells, they'll also get rid of that scum kind of oil slick we can see sometimes, especially when people have sort of overfed in aquariums.
Right, all that organic material. So our waste away is composed of 8 different species of bacteria that I've isolated. That some of them are really good at removing phosphates. Others are really good at breaking down organic compounds. And that's what that oil, that slime, that smell, that's all organic material that these bacteria break down. Now, if you don't break that down, what happens? Your phosphates and nitrates and organic go through the roof and your tank starts looking bad, or you start growing hair algae. If you have high nitrates and low phosphates, you're going to tend towards dinos. High nitrate, low phosphate, your tank's going to tend towards cyanobacteria. Nature's going to do something with those nutrients, which I've talked about many times. With the gels, we can help control that. And we know that some people just are resistant to using a right size skimmer. I hear it all the time. What size tank do you have? 100 gallons, but I got a 500-gallon rated skimmer. That's not a positive. That's a negative. You're over skimming. And I don't mean turn the skimmer off, but right size it. And you don't need to skim 24 hours a day. That's the other thing. Turn the skimmer off at night. Let the bacteria populate, because people are like, well, why do I have to keep on adding this? Because you're constantly removing it. Plus, as I mentioned, corals are constantly consuming the bacteria. So it's not a static system. You need to constantly be adding bacteria to the system. That's why with Thomas, we came up with the Reef Shot bacteria food, so that you can easily and conveniently, without much fuss, be feeding your tank and your corals to make things look better and to keep things healthier. It's all about the health and welfare of the animals, whether it's the reptiles with the lighting or the corals or even your freshwater tanks. This should be enjoyable, not work. And that's what we do, is try to provide you tools to make it more enjoyable and easier for maintaining the health of your animals.
Tim, also concerning the gels, they are completely safe for fish. For example, if one fish starts to try to eat them, is it safe? Yeah.
Yeah, they're completely safe. They're 100% natural. The gel material is basically a type of agar-agar, which is giant kelp. Yeah. The one thing about the gels is they won't disappear. When we first were developing this using different formulas, the gel would slowly dissolve, but the tank would turn into a mess, because that's an organic compound that would cause bacterial blooms, and you couldn't even see through the tank. So
And do you advise on a filthy tank? Could you put a gel like this, or do you advise to use the waste away liquid first? Because you could create a bacteria bloom if the tank is really filthy, or no?
You can, and that's why we say use the liquid, but with the liquid, very clearly start with a low amount. You got to get the tank cleaned up, and just like when you're cleaning your garage, your house, sometimes it looks worse before it looks better, and you've got to go slow. Don't just pour in, like you mentioned, your son, people want to pour things in. Yes. No. It's not good. This is real bacteria, which sounds funny, but there's companies out there that provide you basically water.
But could we start with the gels with the small size and then turn to medium, if you want to do, or
if you had patience, which is a virtue in this hobby, but a lot of people don't. So we recognize that the liquid is a lot more concentrated, but you've got to be careful about how to use it. We say clean it up with the liquid and then maintain it with the gels.
Yeah, for using it, it's a great product. I mean, it really helps.
Taking out the
algae, it's great. You can see the difference. No doubt, single doubt about it.
The film that generally develops on the front of the tank will be gone. The oil, it'll all, so. All right, well, we just about run out of time. I want to thank my partners, Thomas Berchery from ASF and Dale Lewis from Reptile Systems today.
Thanks for inviting.
We love to have questions. We're going to do questions and answers soon on the next session. Bring that back. For now, thank you very much, and good fish keeping. This has been Dr. Tim and Dr. Tim's Aquatics podcast.